budget, and based on the work that you did, sir, when you were the vice president, with the rescue plan, to make sure that we had a good working relationship with the inspectors general, to make sure that the taxpayers were aware of all the projects that were getting done, have transparency and accountability, and that is what we've done. And so with Gene's leadership and the work that he did with ARP, our team got to work and began meeting with the inspectors general who are around the table. Our team has been meeting with them on a regular basis, and all of the cabinet secretaries have responded to your directive to make sure that not only do we get this money out, but we do it in a way that is beneficial to the people of America, and we help win the 21st century. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Shalonda Young, who is the administrator for OMB, who is going to talk to us about the guidance that we put out on your behalf today.
Okay.
Mr. President, earlier today, as Mitchell Andrew just mentioned, we released guidance to federal agencies. Many of the IGs I just asked if they have read it, and they have. And it directed federal agencies on how your administration expects them to implement the bipartisan infrastructure law. This guidance focuses on effectiveness, accountability, and transparency, all topics you consistently remind your staff and the cabinet to focus on. This OMB guidance builds on your commitment to oversight and good government. Last year, OMB issued guidance on implementing the American Rescue Plan. We are proud of those results. You'll hear some of those today. And you'll see how our work hand in hand with the IGs continues to deliver the promise of ARP to the American people. This new guidance shows we're carrying forward your commitment as we implement the bipartisan infrastructure law, that infrastructure projects need to be on time, on task, and on budget. OMB's guidance directs agencies to collaborate with the oversight community, those sitting here, and support communities around the country so they can navigate this process. That includes rural communities, tribal and territorial governments, and other traditionally underserved communities. And this is just the beginning. We're going to continue working with our agency partners, the IGs sitting around this table, and leaders across the country. And now, we'll hear a little bit about the American Rescue Plan and our experiences with the IGs from Gene Sperling, the White House American Rescue Plan Implementation Coordinator.
Thank you, Shalonda. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the day you appointed me, you gave me the following directive based on your experience running the Recovery Act in 2009. You said, number one, respect the independence of the oversight community, but avoid an adversarial approach. Get their expertise early, and if something's going wrong, be the first to know. Due to that directive, my first call on my first full day was to Michael Horowitz, who is the head of the PRAC, our congressionally mandated oversight body. We have met, as you did earlier, we have met every single week to go over potential and existing oversight or fraud issues. We also meet bi-weekly with the GAO Comptroller, Gene Dodaro. Together, we pioneered what we call the gold standard meeting. This asks departments to present their anti-fraud and control plans before they launch, and they have to present it to their IG, to the PRAC, to OMB, and to my team at the same time in one room. We are really honored that Director Young and OMB have chosen to now institutionalize this practice because it works when everybody can hear everyone's views and has to prepare for that. It's delivered results. Countless anti-fraud controls were added at the start of programs at HHS due to penetrating questions from HHS IG Christy Grimm, who asked very tough questions. When Labor Inspector General Larry Turner told me the first time we met that he had to issue 50 separate subpoenas to every state to get the state UI data, we changed policy due to his recommendation to empower him to detect and block billions of dollars in multi-state UI fraud. When Michael Ware ticked off the areas that we needed to do to rebuild anti-fraud guardrails at SBA, we have worked very hard to follow his roadmap. And due to the deep dives we've had with the law enforcement community, we are soon to launch an executive order to both block identity theft by criminal syndicates and to make sure we're giving victims relief. So we have a lot of progress, but Mitch and I both know we got a lot of work to do, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your strong support for independent oversight. Gene mentioned that one of his first calls was to me. One of the first things I did was to call Earl Devaney, just a tremendous IG who sadly we lost last week. I wanted Earl's insights into how the Recovery Board achieved its significant accomplishments, and what Earl told me was that instrumental to his success and the board's successes were the weekly meetings that he had with you as the Vice President. He described how having the support at the highest level of government for robust, independent oversight was a game changer. And so at the PRAC, we've taken it upon ourselves to expand on that and to build on the Recovery Board's successes. We've built an independent oversight model on the foundation of collaboration, transparency of spending data, and the use of data analytics. We've had numerous successes. Among them are weekly meetings with Gene and his team and Jason and his team at OMB, as well as the gold standard meetings. Through these meetings, we've maintained our independence while also being able to raise issues directly with them to provide information based on our oversight work so that agencies can undertake efforts to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse before it happens. As I said during my Senate testimony last month, this senior level engagement with IGs and the PRAC is a model for how to manage large-scale spending initiatives. Last, when fraud happens, and we all know it happens with these large spending efforts, we're using every available tool to hold wrongdoers to account and to recover money for the taxpayers. As the public watchdogs, IGs are helping agencies to be good stewards of pandemic funds, and we're looking forward to doing so with the infrastructure funds.
Thank you. Mr. President. Well, look, you know, I want to thank you all for being here and for your updates. These are some of the Recovery Act was about $900 billion, and the President Obama used to always like to kid with me when he did a State of the Union message. He'd never tell me what he was going to say as I presided over the joint session as Vice President. And it was a big gamble to decide we were going to spend $900 billion trying to get the economy back on its feet. And the President said, and by the way, we're going to make sure I'm turning it over to Joe. And he started calling me Sheriff Joe. Well, the first thing I did was go to Earl Devaney and other inspectors general and said, look, we're going to need a lot of work here. Because look, the one thing I've learned, and you did when you were the mayor, and is that people expect us to do what we say, and they don't always get what they expect from elected officials. And for example, when the CARES Act was passed in the last administration, it was a very meaningful piece of legislation. But the first thing the president did in the time I was hollering a lot about it was he fired Inspector General. There was one put in that was just fired. No Inspector General had independent access. What the hell happened? You found out an awful lot of people were getting unemployment checks that didn't deserve unemployment checks. They were making money on it, an awful lot of people, and the list went on. There was a lot of fraud. And so, and I should acknowledge that Earl Devaney, Earl was a stand-up guy. And I would meet with Earl once a week. I did not tell Earl what to do, but I found out from Earl what was happening because he had carte blanche to know every penny was being spent. And when we came along with the two large pieces of legislation to try to get us through the pandemic as well as bring the economy back on its feet, it was clear to me that we were going to need the kind of oversight, and that's why I called Gene and asked Gene to come in and be a coordinator of this. And, an example, his example, I think Earl's example is a reminder that the end result of independent analysis of whether it was waste and fraud in the effort to distribute that money through the $900 billion in the Recovery Act was independent analysis indicated that there was less than 0.2% waste, fraud, or abuse, less than 0.2. It was heralded as one of the most well-run programs in American history in terms of the size, scope, and did it do what it said it was going to do. And unfortunately, I earned the name from the president when he said from the podium that Sheriff Joe's going to be in charge. I never thought of myself as a sheriff. But it's not the way to get things done, not having really serious oversight. These programs are large, they're consequential. And, in my administration, the watchdogs are back. You're looking at them all here, all of you. And I really mean it. Look, and it's not just whether or not there is fraud going on or wasteful spending. I think I told Gene when I asked him to come in, was that I'd get phone calls, I'd get inspector generals telling me that the way they were going to spend the money that was in the recovery plan was they were going to build a Frisbee park in such and such a place. And I said, no, you're not. I'd pick his vice president, pick the phone and call the governor, the mayor, whomever it was. And I said, you're not going to do that. And he said, well, we can. You can't stop me. Under the law, I'm able to do it. I said, no, you're right, I can't. But I'm going to come out to your city and I'm going to call a press conference. I'm going to say you're wasting money in a Frisbee park. Well, son of a gun, they didn't build a Frisbee park. No, I'm not joking. I really mean it. For example, one of the things that's going to come up, I think this bipartisan infrastructure bill is extremely consequential because we've been in a situation where we used to have the #1 infrastructure in the world. We now rank 13 in the world or thereabouts, and we can't be the world leader absent having the best infrastructure in the world, for real. And so for example, there's a lot of money for bridges, and particularly bridges that are in disrepair, that need help. Now, if there's a bridge that's really in trouble, and may collapse like the one in Pittsburgh did, and we knew that was going to be, it was in trouble, didn't expect it to collapse. And yet the money's being spent on a bridge that is not particularly needed, but it works for the Democrat or Republican governor or mayor because it gets them to an area that they want to make sure their constituents are happy with, that their supporters are. I want to know that. I want to know whether the money is technically can be spent, but it may be the lowest priority in terms of safety for the bridges. And it goes across the board in everything we're doing here. And so, the strong oversight is how we're going to deliver for the American people on time and on budget, and making sure the investments we get to where they're supposed to go. I'll give you another example. There was a Midwestern state that had serious problems with access off their interstate into the city. And they needed help, and it was clear the ramps had to be rebuilt to get into the city. But this particular governor decided that his constituency was a rural constituency. He was going to put 2 lanes in the western part of the state to do it, until I called and said, what are you doing that for? You badly need, you're having accidents on this. Well, he technically could do it, but practically it didn't make a lot of sense. Now, that's not your job as Inspector Generals, but your job as Inspector Generals is not only to waste and fraud, but is the purpose of the law, from your perspective, being followed? Is it being wasted? Is it being wasted? Not just is there fraud, but is it a waste? And, your work's really essential, and it's all about building trust in the American people, that we're going to spend their money well, that we're going to do what we say we're going to do. And your work is essential. And one of the things that we tried to do in both these pieces of legislation, they're very large, not just not just the infrastructure bill, but what we're spending, is we tried to make sure that we demonstrate to the American people we're spending their money well, and we're doing what we said we were going to do. And that's why, if you notice, I tried to make sure that the legislation was written in such a way that it would bypass general assemblies and go straight to where it's needed. Because the last thing I've learned over the years, that if you have you have X billion, $100 million going to a state, and how it's allocated has to be gone through the state legislature, well, guess what? Everybody's going to get a piece of it. It's not going to go where it's most badly needed. So what we do, we've had funding go directly to the cities, directly to the county, directly to be able to pass, and some of it to the state legislature. So all of this is about the American people being able to look at what we're doing and say, they did that pretty well. I guess, okay, I get it. They didn't waste it. And so, I think the work you're doing is really important. And I want to make it clear to the press that's here. Nobody in my administration is telling the inspector generals what they have to do. They're totally independent. They make a judgment. If they want to investigate something, do it. Period. So let's find out what's going wrong and what's going right, and what help you need in order to determine if you're not getting the information you need. And so, because I'll conclude by saying there's a lack of, for the last 10 years, and we got to change it, a lack of sort of faith in government doing exactly what it says it's going to do. We're going to do what we say we're going to do. And it's because of all of you. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Mitch, and then we're going to go into more detail, I guess.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, guys.
Mr. President, what is your reaction to P10 to the change funding?
That's a wrap, team. Thank you. That's a wrap, team. Let's move it out. Up and out.
Confirming
Up and out, team.
G20.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much. We're heading out. We're heading out, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. That's a wrap.
Right this way, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right this way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Is boycotting the
Thank you. Please, right this way.
Thank you.